Some words we use every day are kind of like ancient artifacts, just packed with stories we've totally forgotten. We think we know them, but what if one of the most common, most powerful words in the English language has a secret history? A history that could literally change how we look at the very foundations of faith. Okay, let's get into this. So this entire exploration comes from a book called God's God and Gosh by Hicham. It kicks off with a really dangerous question. What if the word God isn't what we think it is? And what if digging up its true root forces us into an impossible choice about the very nature of Western religion? To even begin to tackle that question, we've got to start with the official story. You can think of it like this huge old fortress of knowledge that's been standing for centuries. The details in the book are far beyond this presentation, which focuses on a subset of arguments and discussions presented in the God's God and Gosh textbook. Our first mission is to find a crack in its walls. And here it is, the whole conflict laid out on one slide. On one side, you have the official story. God is a homegrown European word straight out of paganism. And on the other side, this radical counter-theory, that it's actually an import, an echo from the ancient Middle East. The official story, well, it's pretty neat and tidy. It all starts in the forests of pre-Christian Northern Europe with this word, Gudum. This is the granddaddy of the Old English God, the Old Norse Gud, and the German Gott. It's a solid, well-documented family tree. No arguments there. And if you trace that Germanic word back even further, you land on a Proto-Indo-European root, Jew, which means to call upon or to invoke. Now, this is absolutely crucial. In its original sense, a god isn't defined by what it is, holy, all-powerful, whatever. It's defined by what people do to it. It's the being you shout to when you need help. So the official story seems totally locked down, right? Airtight. But the book argues that there's this one simple, overlooked clue just about how sounds can change over time that could connect this dramatic word to a completely different part of the world. And here is that proposed bridge. It's actually pretty straightforward. In a lot of Semitic dialects, that hard back-of-the-throat Q sound, it often softens into a G sound. So the word kutz, which means holiness, would often be pronounced uds, and suddenly, going from goods to the Germanic good isn't a huge leap at all. It's a tiny, totally plausible step. But the meaning behind this Semitic root, it's a whole different ballgame. QDS isn't about an action we perform. It's about an essential quality. It describes the divine as something completely separate from our ordinary world, the Holy One. So you see the shift? We go from the one we call out to the Holy One itself. Okay, so if this linguistic link is for real, how on earth did a Semitic word for holiness travel all the way to the forests of ancient Germany? Let's follow the breadcrumbs and see where this ancient word's journey takes us. The answer, it turns out, is trade. For centuries, you had this thing called the Amber Road, which was basically an ancient superhighway connecting the Baltic coast all the way down to the Mediterranean. And who were the masters of trade in the era? Semitic people. And believe me, they weren't just carrying amber and spices. They were carrying culture, ideas, and words. The book paints this amazing picture. Just imagine it. A Phoenician merchant. Maybe he drops something valuable, and he exclaims, kadosh, the Holy One, and the local Germanic chieftain hears it. Now, there's no Q sound in his language, so his brain just maps it to the closest sound he knows, a hard G. The word gets adopted, but that deep theological meaning, it gets stripped away, leaving behind just a powerful new name for a deity. Now, if you thought that was a stretch, hold on, because this is where it gets really wild. Look at these parallels. The name Odin, it sounds almost identical to Eden, an ancient name for and still in use for the city Eden, the capital of Yemen, which is built on the biggest volcano in the world, but also a name for an ancient paradise garden in Yemen. And Thor, the god of thunder, well, that resonates with the Arabic word Thor, which means bull, a classic symbol of divine power in ancient Yemen. Are these just crazy coincidences, or are they faded memories of a forgotten connection? The book puts forth this incredible theory that the Norse myths we know are actually just corrupted echoes of a real historical figure, a monotheistic king from Yemen, known from the Quran as Du al-Qornain. The archetype of the wise, all-father ruler becomes Odin, and his immense power to create order becomes Thor. This theory connects the entire northern pantheon, and by extension, the word Guth, all the way back to a Semitic monotheistic source. So you have this ancient word Guth, whether it's purely Germanic or a Semitic echo, just sitting there in Northern Europe for centuries. And then one man, a single historical figure, makes a decision that will weaponize it and change the course of history. That man was Wulfula, a Gothic missionary in the 4th century.
Now, he could have used the Greek word theos or the Aramaic Eloha, but he didn't. Instead, he reached for the local, familiar pagan word, Guth. And honestly, this was a brilliant move. He didn't come in and say, hey, abandon your Goth. No, he said, that being you've been calling Goth all this time, we're here to tell you his true story. It made Christianity feel like it belonged there, not like some foreign idea from Rome. But there was an even deeper, more theological reason for his choice. You have to understand Wulfula was an Arian Christian, and for Arians, the theology was very specific, and it's critical we get this right. They believed that Jesus was a messenger of the divine. Yes, incredibly exalted as being a prophet of the divine, but he was created by God, and that meant he wasn't co-equal with the uncreated creator himself. So here's the kicker. For Wulfula's Arian theology, the vague Germanic word Guth was perfect. It was a blank slate. It just meant a powerful being that you invoke. As mirrored to the Aramaic, it didn't carry all the baggage of meaning an uncreated absolute God. It fit his non-Trinitarian view like a key in a lock. So all of this, the linguistic roots, the missionary's choice, the theology, it all comes together and brings us to what the book calls the great fork in the road. And here we are faced with two profound and frankly, deeply uncomfortable dilemmas. And this just lays out the two unavoidable conclusions so clearly. If God is purely Germanic, then the faith was built on a pagan foundation, using a word that is totally disconnected from its Semitic founder, Jesus. However, embracing indirectly the Aryan derivation and confirmation. But if the word God actually comes from the Semitic word for holy, well, the consequences are somehow even more explosive. Let's just walk through the nice and slow. If the word God really means holy or Holy Spirit at its very core, then the central confession of Christianity, Jesus is God, stops being a statement about divinity. It actually becomes something else entirely. Jesus is the Holy Spirit. An interpretation like that completely blows up the doctrine of the Trinity, which depends on the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit being distinct. It reframes Jesus exactly how the Arians saw him, a perfect human servant, filled with and empowered by the Holy Spirit, but not the uncreated God himself. It suggests that the Arians, the ones who were later branded as heretics, might have actually had the more linguistically and theologically logical position all along. And so we're left with the book's final haunting question. Is the word that sits at the very heart of Western faith just a vandalized pagan relic, forever cut off from its true origins, but repurposed by Arianism? Or is it far more shocking, an ancient Semitic word that, if you understand it correctly, is an unwitting testimony against the very doctrine it was chosen to build, thus confirming Arianism?
The links are in the bio. Please subscribe, press the like button and the bell to keep updated.